These are the best results I've ever gotten with this material. I have tumbled it in the past, so I used that past experience plus some trial and error this time to get these results. I will try to show you how you can do it too. This is what's known as Coquina Jasper. It's also called cobra jasper, elephant skin jasper, and script stone. Those are the names I've heard it called. It tends to have this really interesting patterning on it. Here, let's get some of these wet. There we go. You can see that a bit better. And that's actually crushed and fossilized shell fragments, which is pretty cool. Now, these pieces here have been at least rough tumbled. So they've gone through 60, 90 rough stage 1 grit. I have tried tumbling this in the past and have not had any luck getting any sort of shine. In fact, I'm not entirely sure if these stones have been put all the way through and just didn't turn out, and I hid them in a bag in my basement that I recently found and was like, oh, I'll tumble them again. Or if this is a batch I put through the first stage and then was just essentially too afraid to try again because it's a tricky stone. But you can see it does have some really cool patterns. It would look really cool if it polished up. So I'm going to give it another go now that I have a bit more experience rock tumbling. I mean, there's got to be a way to do it, so we're going to give it a shot. There are a few things I want to point out that I already know. Even though the name has jasper in it, you know, Coquina Jasper, elephant skin jasper, cobra jasper, this does not tumble like jasper. Do not treat it like jasper. It is significantly softer. If you try to tumble this with regular jaspers, it'll get so beat up or just sort of tumble away into nothing. This is significantly softer. I don't know why they call it a jasper. I have not had it tumble well when treated like a jasper. So I'm just gonna put that right at the beginning. Don't treat it like jasper. Don't tumble it with jaspers. Don't tumble it with things you would normally tumble with jasper. This is my 10-pound Vibe barrel, and as you can see, it's got about 4 pounds, 10 ounces, almost 11 ounces of stone. I am going to need to add quite a bit of media. I just got this new bag of media, so the ceramic is a little bit rougher, so I definitely don't want to put it in any later stages. But I don't have a ton of already pre-used media, so I want to definitely get this grinding in the 220 with these stones. So I'm going to dump some of these in, and then I'm also going to get some of my older ceramic media to put in here, so I'll go grab those. And this is some of my older media. You can see it's kind of shiny. It's all different sizes because some of it's a lot older than other pieces, and eventually, you know, it wears down. So I'm going to mix in some of this stuff too. Next up is 220 silicon carbide. I got this from Kingsley North. I also sometimes get my grit from the Rock Shed out of, I think, North Dakota. Might be South Dakota. I'd have to double check. Both of those places have really good grit. So this is now 10 pounds about of material. 5 pounds of it is stone. I'm going to start with 3 tablespoons of this. I would normally go a little bit more, but because this is such a soft stone, I'm going to start with 3 tablespoons and see how it looks tomorrow. They seem pretty well rounded and smoothed out, so I'm not too worried about this stage. All right, so that's all attached. Because I started with mostly dry rock, I'm going to have to add in a bit of water when I get this going. I'm going to just start by adding a little bit here. You don't want too much, but you need enough to kind of get the rocks moving. So let's see how this looks. I fully anticipate this getting very gummed up. So I'm going to have to check it later today a couple times. And then I'm probably only going to let this go a day in this grit. Because like I said, it definitely is a softer stone. I forgot to check this last night before I went to bed. You can see how gummed up it got. This is probably like 18 to 20 hours. So I'm gonna add some water. Added a lot of water. It's really foaming up. Time to rinse after this 220 here. Alright, so now I'm going to add some scoops of 500 aluminum oxide. I'm going to do 3 tablespoons and then hook this back up. I'm going to start adding water and soap so I can rinse this out later. I'll give it a couple more hours with the soap and that'll make it just a lot easier to rinse out. This one's dried off. This is after 500 aluminum oxide. It's not shiny, but it's looking pretty good. All right, so the bowl is back on. I lost a little bit of volume, which again tells me that this is not truly a Jasper. Jasper would not lose any volume after 500 aluminum oxide. So I'm going to add a few more of my pre-used pellets here, kind of fill in that space, and then I'm going to add sugar, which is my other trick for softer stone. So I'm going to do just under 4 tablespoons of granulated sugar. And then, because I do think this is a softer stone, not a real Jasper, I'm going to do 1,000 aluminum oxide grit. Normally with Jaspers and quartz, I would skip this, but now I'm just going to do 2 tablespoons of 1,000. I'm going to do 2.5 tablespoons. This has been going almost 2 days in 1,000 grit just because I didn't have time. So I'm going to add water, add some soap. I'll let this mix for a couple hours. And then I will wash it out. These are dried off. Not really any shine. This is after 1,000 grit aluminum oxide. Next up is polish, so fingers crossed. Alright, so I'm going to add sugar again. This is the polish step. It seems like a softer stone. I'm going to do a little bit over 3 tablespoons of sugar. Add some polish. I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of polish. It's been about 2 days of this in polish. So I'm going to add some soap and then some water. I'm going to let this go for a little bit like this before I rinse and dry them. Alright, so these are pulled out of the polish stage and dried off. They do have a little bit of shine to them. There's definitely an improvement over from when they went in, but I was honestly hoping for a little bit better. These right here are actually ones I purchased, and I feel like they actually are pretty comparable in quality to that. So for the most part, I'm pleased with how they turned out. I could just finish at this step, but I have one more thing I want to try. So I'm actually going to try dry polishing. So I'm going to take this corn cob, and I'm going to fill up the bowl with the corn cob and the stones and add some polish and try running that for like a day or 2. The bowl's all dried out. You do want everything dry when you do this. This is a trick you can use for softer stones like fluorite and
if you're gonna polish something like a Petoskey stone. This is a trick for that. So essentially you polish it dry. You don't add any water to this. You use the corn cob and it kind of cushions everything. I probably have a little more stones than I would normally run in this method, but I'm just gonna give it a go, see if there's any improvement. If it does seem like there's an improvement, maybe I'll split the load in half and try like another day or so with half the stones in there and just more of the corn cob. Now, I have used this corn cob media before, so there is a bit of polish in here already. You can kind of reuse it, but I'll probably add a little more polish to it because I'm not entirely sure how much is really left in there that's good.
All right, this is all attached. When you're doing dry polish, you should wear a mask to protect from the dust. You do not want to breathe in rock dust, so take the proper precautions. 2 scoops, see how it goes.
These have been in dry polish with corn cob for about a day. So I'm gonna drop these right into water and then put them through a burnishing or washing step. You can see, they got pretty coated and dirty. That polish is gonna get into any of the little crevices, and I just wanna try to get it out of all there. Just now gonna add some borax. This wasn't a full, quarter cup. I just don't have any clean tablespoons, but I'm gonna add a decent amount. Just looks like that, borax. I am gonna add enough ceramic media to make sure this can move around. There we go, getting a little more movement. There's a lot of water in here, so I really want to get it rinsed out with that borax soap. I'm gonna let this go probably at least an hour, maybe a little bit longer. I'll check on it and see what it's looking like. All right, so these went in the borax water for about 2 hours, mainly just because I didn't have time to stop it earlier. So I pulled these out of the dry polish, rinsed them off, dried them off, and here's where we ended up. I do think there's a slight improvement over the wet polish stage, but still some pieces just did not improve very much. Like this side of this piece looks like it's got an okay shine, I suppose, but this side doesn't. Definitely has some like undercutting happening in there. And part of me wonders if that undercutting is because I did first the wet polish and then the dry. If I had just gone right to a dry polish, would that have happened? I don't know. I do think if I did this again, I would skip the wet polish and just immediately try the dry polish stage. Oh, that's hard to say. So I'm going to compare some of these to these store-bought, like wholesaler purchased ones. I do feel like some of them turned out to be, of that quality or better. That's pretty comparable in shine. In fact, like even better perhaps. But then there's also some pieces, that didn't really turn out well at all. I pulled aside what I consider my sort of favorite pieces. Some of these I like because of the color. Like I really think these darker ones look neat because there's not a lot of them. So I like that. Cool patterns too. And then some I like because of their shape. Like I like this one because it has this little circle at the bottom, but it's like flat and would probably make almost like a nice cabochon. This one took a really nice polish too. So it has a nice pattern. It took a decent polish for this stone, and it's got like a cool shape where it could be wire wrapped. Here's some more that took a decent polish. Cool patterns with that one. That's really cool. That almost looks like a flower down there at the bottom. Yeah, this one took a nice shine. I like this one. Look at that shape right there. That one too. This one has a really nice color and a nice shine. A few more here. Look at that. That looks like a crinoid right there. Very cool. Some of these bigger ones. A lot of fossils packed into this one. Look at all that. A lot going on in that one. There we go. Now again, I would say do not tumble these like they are a Mohs hardness 6.5 to 7, like it'll tell you online, because that is a lie. There's no way these are that hard. I would eat one of these before I think I would tell somebody to tumble these like they're a 6.5 to 7 on the most hardness scale, because there is no way. That is really cool. That almost looks like an ammonite, doesn't it? The way it fossilized. Very cool. They're still cool. They have really neat pattern. You know, if you get really quality stones, perhaps you can get a halfway decent polish on them.
My final notes for this material are that it is not a beginner's stone. Treat it more like a most hardness 3 to 4 instead of a 6.5 to 7. Include a 1000 grit aluminum oxide stage, and then also utilize a dry polish instead of using wet polish.